Hi, it's me, Karen Romano Young, back to read Day 6 of A Girl, a Raccoon, and the Midnight Moon with pictures by Jessixa Bagley, published by Chronicle Kids in 2020. Operation Storytime. When we finished, Francine had just jumped into the library's staff picture for the newspaper. And boy, is Pearl mad. Chapter 5, Fiction versus Nonfiction. Still August 29th. Imagine Francine getting to be in the picture for the paper. Pearl's outrage and fury at herself for letting it happen was too much to bear. She gasped and ran from the garden, past the reading room and through the circulation area, opened the book elevator and curled herself into the bottom shelf of the book cart. She sat there fuming a while, until the feeling faded into thinking, into developing a theory that needed some information, a theory about how heavy Vincent's head was and what kind of person it would take to move it. It couldn't possibly have been whatever little animal had left those paw prints. It couldn't have been an accident. It had to have been a crime. There was a thud and a jolt, and the book elevator began to go up. Basement breath, damp air rose up the pitch-dark elevator shaft and cooled her. The elevator hummed and buzzed, lifting her to the second floor. Simon, who had climbed the stairs to meet her, pulled the cart from the elevator into the nonfiction stacks. "Ugh, Pearl," Simon grunted. "You are one heavy volume." Pearl tumbled out of the cart and lay on the floor in a heap. "Simon, you're pretty muscular." He laughed an embarrassed laugh. "So? Could you lift Vincent's head off her neck?" "By myself? Maybe. But get it down a ladder and into a car? Only if I rolled it across the ground. And why would I?" "But if someone did, don't you think rolling would make a dent?" He thought. "The grass would be flat like a bowling ball had been rolled across it." "I'm going to check," said Pearl, and she went barreling down the spiral stairs. Mom and Bruce were having an intense exchange in the garden. Their grim conversations had been going on a while, but since the theft of the head, they had grown even darker, more intense, more frequent, and more secret. Now the two were circling each other on the other side of the yew bush hedge, their voices hissing back and forth. Pearl tiptoed closer to the open door to spy. "What are you doing about it?" Mom's voice rose right over the hedge. "Trish, it's not a neighborhood hub anymore. People get their news and magazines online, and only the desperate few need computers as sluggish as ours." "Desperate?" "Dedicated, maybe. Dignified." "Desperate," repeated Bruce, "and destitute." "It's still important." Mom's fists were clenched at her sides. "I didn't say it wasn't important to us, but to the city? There has to be a better reason for people to come than slow computers and wrinkled newspapers." "Are you giving up?" "No, I'm not giving up," said Bruce. "At least write another proposal. Keep asking for more books. Fill out order forms. I don't know. Describe the specific audiences that need the books. The board has to see you're making every effort." "It's just busy work," said Bruce. "I can't ask to increase the collection again now. What reason would I give? They'll just reject it again. The budget for books isn't going to come if they won't fix the building." "So you are giving up?" Mom asked again. Pearl felt the question like a thump in the chest. "Is that what you want me to do, Patricia?" "How can you ask me that?" demanded Mom. It was Bruce's voice that hurt Pearl's heart. She dashed out the door and interrupted. "Of course she doesn't. What would we do without you, Bruce?" It took nerve butting in like this, but the idea that Mom thought Bruce should resign if he was just going to give up otherwise? No, not on top of everything else. Mom said, "Pearl, we're talking business, not personal life." "Are we?" asked Bruce. Pearl couldn't look at their faces. She got down on her hands and knees, her head turned to one side to put her eyes at the height of the grass, scanning for the kind of path a head might make, glad in the certainty that she was a distraction. "What now, my love?" said Bruce tenderly. "Have you lost your marbles?" Pearl said, "Don't you think if Vincent's head got rolled across the grass it would have made a dent?" She wondered if Mom was crying. She couldn't bear to look up to check. But Mom said with just a light sniff, "You think the head was rolled across the ground?" Well, there are no wheelbarrow tracks, said Pearl, but look, Bruce, there were a few more of those footprints with the long claws. If raccoons could talk, said Bruce. Then we'd know it all, huh, said Pearl. She was sure he was the only library manager in the city who could tell raccoon prints from those of skunks and rats and possums. Bruce said, if only. Who says they can't? Asked Mom. That relieved Pearl. Mom was okay if she was on the subject of talking raccoons. As for Bruce, Pearl figured he'd rather talk about raccoons, like he did in his old job and as a volunteer for a nature watcher program called City Wildlife, than what he had to talk about to manage the library. If Mrs. Malamar and her daughter Matilda could hear you, they'd be very insulted, said Mom. She pointed to the trees and put a finger to her lips to hush them. Bruce rolled his eyes over Mom and her wacky raccoon characters. Next, you'll be telling me we need to leave a bowl of milk for them, he said. Pearl said, that's baby stuff. It had been at least 3 years since the last time Mom had convinced her to put out milk for the raccoons, or gotten her to leave them a letter, or told her a story about their bedrooms inside the pine trees. That doesn't mean they wouldn't appreciate it, said Mom lightly. Bruce snorted. Sure, he said. Raccoons on her mind, Pearl went back up to the second floor, to nonfiction, to the 500s, science, facts, reality, Bruce's side of the raccoon story. 590 in the Dewey Numbers, that was big books about animals. She figured Raccoons, A Natural History. Raccoons, A Natural History by Samuel I. Zeveloff, Smithsonian Institution Scholarly Press, 2003. Would have what she was looking for, a paw print. Before she went, a weird title caught her eye. Raccoons Are the Brightest People. Raccoons Are the Brightest People by Sterling North, Dutton, 1966. The cover said the book was by the best-selling author of Rascal. Rascal by Sterling North, Dutton, 1963. So she went looking for that in the 599s. It was a memoir about a real raccoon with a picture of a raccoon that sure looked like it would have been a bright person, enough to make the author write a special book about the whole species. Pearl grabbed them both. The prints in the book matched the prints by the statue. But what did that really mean anyway? Pearl already knew the raccoons hung out by the statue. There was no way they could have stolen Vincent's head. Pearl sat down on the warm bricks and leaned against the base of the statue, turning her face up in the sun. When she looked down at the books, there was a catalog card on the lap of her blue jeans skirt, right where the shadow of Vincent's fingers fell. It had fallen out of one of the books. On the card was written in what looked like Sharpie, a raccoon, he who scratches with his hands, Algonquin. And then Ari crossed out. And then Alaki crossed out. And then Aki crossed out. And then Eric Lancaster. I like it. Someone had been researching raccoons before Pearl. Fair enough, it was a library. But what did Eric Lancaster mean? Who was that? Lancaster, like the old owners of the library? The I like it, after the crossouts, made it seem like someone was choosing names. Why that name? And who was naming someone that? There weren't any more actual Lancasters around here, were there? Pearl climbed the stairs again, this time all the way to the 3rd floor. She turned on the lights in the memorial room, where ghostly portraits showed the puffy faces, weird hair buns, and old-fashioned clothes of the family whose house this had been before they gave it to the city, along with the garden. Pearl walked along looking at the names: Herbert and Amelie, Walter and Margaret, William and Carol. Each couple was 20 or 25 years younger than the last, passing the house down the line. They all held hands over this same little white table, which had been passed down too, and was still sitting there now empty, under the portrait of William and Carol, the last. All these people were Lancasters, but nobody was named Eric. Pearl decided to put the catalog card with the names in her pocket and its puzzle in the back of her brain. She picked up Raccoons Are the Brightest People and tried to fit what she was reading with what she already knew about raccoons. She realized her knowledge was a bit fuzzy. Indeed. She hadn't thought about the neighborhood raccoons for years, and she realized, while she used to spend a lot of time thinking about raccoons, most of those thoughts seemed silly now. If she divided up what she knew about raccoons into nonfiction and fiction, the facts would have come from former park ranger Bruce, and the made-up tales would have come from Mom. There were raccoons around the neighborhood, said Bruce, the same as there were in any North American city. They lived in the library garden up in the trees, and they slept in the day and came out at night. Nocturnal. Those were the facts. But before Bruce had come to the library, most of what Pearl had known about raccoons came from made-up tales. When Pearl was 4, Mom had taught her to put a bowl of water outside the garden door at night for the raccoons to drink and wash their food in, and sometimes a saucer of milk for a treat. Each week they set out used copies of The Moon for the raccoons to shred to line their nests. Mom told Pearl that the raccoons actually read the moons before they shredded them, which was why she didn't give them the Star or the News, because she didn't want them reading that trash. Mom showing Pearl these things seemed no weirder than other parents teaching kids to fill bird feeders or to put acorns out for fairies. A sidebar about legends. Legends are stories that get bigger with multiple tellings. They can seem like obvious lies. For instance, Paul Bunyan having a big blue ox named Babe for a pet. Paul Bunyan, a tall tale retold and illustrated by Stephen Kellogg. William Morrow, 1984. Nonsense. And yet it's a lie you want to be true, because who wouldn't want a big blue ox for a pet? You might say it's a myth, which is less of a lie and more of a story. Whatever the reason, people like the idea, so it sticks around and gets retold as a tall tale. Sooner or later, it's described as a legend, which is weird because that makes it respectable, which is a funny thing to become after all those not truths. But really, what could be more respectable than a reading raccoon? How did the raccoons learn to read? Little Pearl had asked. Same as you, Mom always told Pearl, even in the years after Bruce arrived, shaking his head at the fiction, by having so many stories read to them. When Mom was a child, she had come to this very library for story hours, and the children's librarian, someone Mom loved named Mrs. Whitney, had read books outside by Vincent's statue. The raccoons always woke from their daytime sleeping and lay drowsy in their nests, listening to Mrs. Whitney's tales. When Pearl was smaller, she was always peering up into the trees, trying to see any raccoons at all. Bruce reminded her that in the daytime they were inside the trees, snoozing. At night, Pearl slept through their activities, scouring the neighborhood for left-behind tidbits, washing their food in the bowl, drinking the milk, taking the newspapers away to read, or using shredded newsprint to fluff up their nests. But occasionally, on lucky nights, she'd see one of the little bandits in the alley at dusk. When they reach a certain age, young raccoons go off to seek their fortunes, Mom had told Pearl. And Bruce did agree with that, because he said they are territorial. They get competitive as they near reproductive age, so only a couple of raccoons stick around any area. The rest go off to find their own place. Mostly, Mom's stories were about the raccoons that lived near the library. Mrs. Malamar and her daughters, Matilda and Eilenwe, are the library raccoons, Mom always affirmed. Malamar? Like the cookie? Yep. And Matilda is another name for the moon. Are you surprised? Pearl had thought maybe it was Matilda, like the one in the Roald Dahl book she loved. Matilda by Roald Dahl, illustrated by Quentin Blake, Jonathan Cape, 1988. Then she thought maybe that Matilda had been named for the moon too. When she asked who Eilenwe was named for, Alice handed her a book with a boy and a pig on the cover. The Book of Three is the first of the Chronicles of Prydain pentalogy by Lloyd Alexander, Henry Holt, 1964 to 1968. Pearl had asked once, "Where's Mr. Malamar?" Mom had shrugged. He went off to seek his fortune too, I guess. Like my dad. Pearl was always trying to find out about her father. Just like, Mom had said, gone forever. Let's focus on who's here. Pearl looked up at Bruce to see what he would say, but he was studying Mom with a little sweet smile, and he didn't say anything at all. Bye.